Wavical is an award-winning data and analytics company based in Chicago with a national presence. As a provider of award-winning cloud data, analytics, and AI solutions and services, Wavical combines deep technical expertise and industry knowledge with the proprietary automation tools to support the rapid shift to modern data architectures, real-time insights, and AI. Wavical Data Solutions is proud to grow through almost 100% referral. With solid delivery reputability, proudly leveraging the ability to meet clients where they are to unlock the power of data. Wavical Data Solutions.
Hello, I'm Dr. Beverly Wright, and welcome to Tag Data Talk. With us today, we have Rachel Stu from Elevance Health, and we're talking about the role of the Chief AI Officer. Thanks for being here, Rachel.
Thanks for having me, Beverly.
Absolutely. Well, let's start off with a little bit of background. Tell us, why are you so cool?
Yeah, I am probably one of the few people that went to school for what I'm still doing.
Love it.
Yeah, I went to school for analytics and data science, which at the time was not called that. But I've just naturally grown up through AI data, seen how it's evolved from very early days of computer programming to now Gen AI.
Yeah.
And one of the things that actually makes me really cool is, even though I have a really technical background, I most often sit in with the business.
Oh.
And so I have a lot of strategy background that I bring to the tech, and then vice versa, bring the tech to that strategy.
Yeah, that's a great combination and not something everybody can pull off. And I have to say, you have a really good reputation for being able to do that from people that I know that you work with. So
Thanks.
Excellent. So we're talking about this new, sexy title of Chief AI Officer. What is this thing? Is it just the newer version of a Chief Analytics Officer? Is it something different? And is it, what is it?
Yeah, it's a good topic. I actually just read an article earlier this morning in a technical magazine that just about 25% of companies are evaluating adding a chief AI officer to their E-team.
Okay.
And I thought that was really interesting that a lot of businesses are really starting to see the value of data, not just in operational savings, but revenue generating, and vice versa, that it can be both. And so I think it's really interesting that we have this influx of companies that are saying, yes, it's such a critical piece of our business that we're going to create an executive officer role around data and AI.
Mm-hmm. How do you see, it's still being formed, so who knows what's going to actually happen. But how do you see this reporting structure? Are they reporting to the CIO, the CTO, a chief strategy officer, directly to the CEO? Where do you see them reporting?
Yeah, most often what I've seen and also what I've recommend is right into the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
So a chief AI officer needs to have a technical background.
Mm-hmm.
That person needs to understand how the technology works, what the nuances are, what would be having an engineering background, data quality. So all of these things that are typically very technical that we think.
Mm-hmm.
But the true role of a chief AI officer to be successful is in the adoption of the AI.
Adoption. So you think that should be their job.
Absolutely.
Just not even to necessarily generate, because people are generating AI all over the place, right? You almost can't harness it. But the adoption. So unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. So as we were chatting earlier, a good number of AI projects, more than 80%, and we said even upwards of 95% of AI projects fundamentally don't succeed, are not adopted widely across the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of that is due because there is a lot of research and development in AI, and so we would expect that. But a good part of it, and where we're seeing now, especially with the proliferation of Gen AI and kind of getting more democratization of data and AI, is what are the acceptable use cases where AI can truly help?
Mm-hmm.
Where may another solution be better?
Mm.
And so a key function of the chief AI officer is to evaluate what are the appropriate use cases
Mm-hmm.
and what are the pros and cons of those use cases.
I see.
Um,
Okay.
AI is not a panacea for every business problem.
Right.
And I'm sure you talk to people every day that sometimes there is that thinking.
Yeah, they want to go straight to AI for everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see.
And sometimes it's a fundamental business problem or a process problem that needs to be solved
Mm-hmm.
that AI could potentially even just exacerbate that.
Right. Okay. So, is there a kiss of death as far as reporting structure? Like we talked about, they should go to the CEO, but if they go to the CIO or the CSO, the strategy, or the CTO, is there a place that you're like, well, I really think they should go to CEO, but the worst thing you could do is to put a chief AI officer in
Yeah, I think the worst possible place is going up to the CFO,
CFO.
which
Oh,
I have seen in some organizations where it's considered kind of a financial.
I see.
Yeah, and that tends to be more of the kiss of death in the sense that AI can be cost savings, it can be revenue generating, but it also has to be holistic across the organization.
Okay.
And sometimes putting that in a financial organization or under financial oversight,
Mm-hmm.
that it limits that ability to see the application across the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
kind of reduces some of the AI into, well, are you saving me money? If not, I'm
Right.
shutting this program
Right. Now,
down.
how do you ever innovate? I mean, could you even get any kind of research or any sort of, trial and error innovation if you're being held accountable for every single move you make?
Yeah.
That would be tricky.
Yeah.
What about other C-suite data roles like chief data officer and chief analytics officer and chief data scientist?
Mhm.
Like or is this even a data science thing? Like how would they, or is it more of an engineering thing? Like how do they interact with these people?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a chief data officer is a great role. Data is really the key to AI. You've
Mm-hmm.
chatted about that on
Mm-hmm.
a lot of your podcasts, where if you have incomplete data or dirty data, that can really affect your models
Right.
and your outcome. So that's a really critical role, especially when we start as companies building models and AI that does cross the organization and it
Mm-hmm.
proliferates much more into the organization. And we find AI to be a lot more ubiquitous. Now, some data that may previously have been contained or just for the benefit of one group fundamentally may flow upstream or downstream, where those particular users may not be vested in that or even have that insight.
Mm-hmm.
But a chief data officer working together with the AI officer can truly build a comprehensive data strategy for an organization.
Yep. Okay. So none of these people are going away. This is truly a net new type of thing, right? Do you see certain
Yeah.
things like a chief data scientist going away because all of a sudden, I mean, if I work at a company and I'm the chief data scientist and someone is hired as a chief AI officer, I might feel a little queasy. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the chief AI officer, in my experience, in my opinion, is a very strategy business role.
That's very interesting. So you see it as a strategy business type role,
Yes.
even though these people need to have technical chops, at least to some extent, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with that being a chief data officer, chief data science officer, I would love to have a chief AI officer because that's someone that's going to advocate for me to my users and
Hmm.
say, hey, here's the advantage of this. And it's going to take AI and data science, which historically has been a cost center,
Mm,
and put it into a strategic and revenue generating center.
I see. Very interesting. So there's 25% right now that are really considering a
Mm.
CAIO. What do you think that number will look like in, say, 5 years?
Probably, well, gosh, I'm a very positive person, but I think it would in 5 years that it will be very common.
Yeah.
Very common, greater than 3/4 of the companies.
Okay.
And especially with a lot of the work that I do in the industry, as well as the investment community here in Atlanta, a lot of organizations that historically you wouldn't think necessarily were very data-based organizations are leaning very much on data now and seeing that as a competitive advantage. Things, even industries that historically were very service-based, auto industry or kind of certain types of retail or retail services or very small businesses are now leaning on data for competitive advantage.
Okay. And is this reserved only for big companies? Because you hinted about small companies. Is this only a big company thing, or do you think everybody kind of needs something?
Yeah, I think everybody needs something. I advise startups. It's much easier to do it at the ground level and start tracking than it is to go back and retroactively try and do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't, for small organizations, it doesn't have to be something like Gen AI or some very
cutting edge, new, right?
Yeah, it could be something simple like an online database or a spreadsheet where you're tracking sales or costs or different types of customers or what are the demographics or what do they usually buy or when do they usually buy. That type of information, if you can start gathering that, can actually, in many aspects, help a small company much bigger than a larger company.
I see.
Because when you're at a point when you're small that you can grow multiples every year, that type of data can be very, very valuable to that.
Right. That's a good point. So 2 more questions. This is really intriguing because this is kind of the big, I mean, not just in data, this is like the big job right now. So one question is, what about companies that are kind of slow to adopt? There was talk in, I would say 25, 30 years ago when I was early in my career about how if you don't see data as an asset, you're going to be in trouble. Like your shares are going to go down, like you're going to lose revenue, like you're not going to be a great employer because people aren't going to want to go to you if you don't see data as an asset. Well, now it's given, like of course you have to see data as an asset, right? Is AI going to go like that too? Like if people don't start bringing on the CAIO or something like it kind of roles, are they going to fall behind? And if so, in what ways will they fall behind?
Yeah, I think that the key is being very intentional about the application. Where I've had conversations with business leaders that they hear all of the news about AI, especially now Gen AI.
Yeah.
And they want to do it.
They just want to do it.
They just want to do it.
Yeah. Our board wants us to do it. Yeah,
they
do
want
something.
to do it. I can sell this for more if I say that it's AI based.
Oh, I see.
And I think that there will be some almost AI exhaustion that may come in where if you're a consumer or a client and you're trying to buy something and everything says it's AI.
I see. Yeah. You get tired of hearing about it.
Exactly. But I think the companies that can sit and be very intentional about how they are implementing, I do think the chief AI officer role, if it's implemented properly as a business function and a strategy function, I absolutely think those companies will have an advantage because they will better understand their customer, they will better understand their competitive ecosystem. In private companies or startups, it will be vastly easier to raise money and differentiate yourself from other organizations. So I do think that companies need to look at adopting, but be very intentional from a strategy perspective.
So don't just do it to do it because, you have to, or you want that stamp of like, hey, AI.
Exactly.
That's a great point. And then the last thing before I get your final piece of advice, Rachel, I'm 17. I'm in high school. what do I do to get a chief AI officer role? I want that job in like 10 years. What do I do to get there?
Yeah. Well, I wish I was 17 again. What I tell the people that I mentor and on my team is that it's very good and also easy to focus on the technical aspect. I want to be a great programmer. I want to understand this. I want to run my code efficiently. And that has a lot of value. But to really grow in leadership is that business acumen where you can simplify AI to have a conversation with another business leader to truly understand their problem, and then kind of look in your toolkit, your technical toolkit, and pick the best tool that's going to solve that problem. So what I tell my students is, yes, focus on your programming and your math. That's really important. But go and take public speaking classes. Take a writing class, because a lot of to be successful in that chief AI role is communication and persuasion.
Isn't that something? We're down to talking about influence again, right? Business influence. And you see it as a business and a strategy type of function. So it's a way of sort of matchmaking use cases and having the toolkit, but also you mentioned things like communication and influence and, those sorts of things are not part of the technical toolkit. So that's a good set of information to know for people that are trying to get there. And then lastly, what final piece of advice would you give to people that are trying to better grasp this chief AI officer role, especially if they're interested in becoming one?
Yeah. Gosh, I have a lot of advice, but I think that the advice I have is to really dig in and understand the business problems, because a lot of times what a user may say is their biggest problem isn't really the problem.
Yeah.
And so sitting and doing observation or talking or doing the research to say, what is the actual problem? Because that's where you can truly design a solution that will be adopted, because you're solving the problem, not necessarily a symptom or what someone told you.
Right. And I've seen that so many times. And I think that's a big part of why much of what we produce doesn't make it past the shelf. I've actually written an article about business problem framing because I'm trying to help stimulate that. So I'm glad you highlighted and confirmed me. Thank you again to Rachel Stu from Elevance Health for talking to us about the role of the Chief AI Officer.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.